Good morning, everyone. I hope you heard my music today. I know you couldn't hear it last week, and I looked like a complete loon, bobbing to the music, which nobody could hear. I figured out a new feature here in Restream. I hope you could hear it. Hi, I am Sarah Fargo O'Brien. I am your host of the Healing Hour. And the Healing Hour is sponsored by the Let's Be Diverse podcast and Andrew Stout. I'm sure he is in the house today. Let me know, Andrew, if you're here. Let me know if any of you are here. Hello, friends. I have a very special guest today. I will bring her up in just a second. We are going to be talking all things trauma-informed care in curriculum in higher education, particularly social work programs, since we are both social workers and that is our wheelhouse, our field. This is one of my mentors, y'all, in trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership. I learned from her. She is amazing. She is warm. She is so knowledgeable. She handles things with like power and grace in a way I have never seen. And I just absolutely adore her. So, without further ado, and I will let her share more about herself, we are going to bring on Katie. And once I bring on Katie, I'll do my check-in and we'll do our 3 deep breaths. I realized I left Deborah off last time and she was doing deep breaths behind the scene. But deep breaths are good for all of us. So we will bring her up. We will do a check-in with her, a check-in with me, our deep breaths, and then we will dive into content. Oh, my buddy's here. Hi, Jason. Good morning. I'm so glad that you could tune in. Let me get Katie up. Let me stop sharing my screen. Y'all, this one woman show shit is difficult. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
Flying by the seat of my pants like we were just discussing.
Aren't we all?
But, right? You know, we're doing it. We're doing the damn thing, figuring it out.
Absolutely.
You know, this one woman show podcast thing is interesting. I know you do a podcast.
I do.
All the things. So y'all check out Katie's podcast. What is it called again?
It's called a Trauma Informed Future podcast.
Trauma Informed Future podcast. Yes, check that out. She is like amazing guests, all things trauma informed.
You one of them.
Yes, indeed. You had somebody really cool recently that I was just looking at. So that's awesome. So I'll let Katie introduce herself in just a second when we dive in. I'll do a check-in, Katie, then I'll let you check in if you want to say anything, and then we'll do our deep breaths. Like always, guys, I am barely at my desk before 11 a.m. And so thank you to my podcast guests for understanding that we don't do things early. Katie and I said we don't do things early in the virtual world. We are here like on time, and that's about it. But I didn't have to go anywhere this morning, so I'm like a little less frazzled than if I have to like drop off my dog at dog care or something and doggy daycare and then come back. So I'm feeling pretty good. This is the only like live face-to-face thing I have scheduled today. So I get to write after this. I need to write for Integrate and do some other things. Get ready for the book launch. I'll talk about more of that at the end of the show today for this weekend. And today is the first day because it was raining yesterday and raining the day before here that I actually got out to like take a walk with my dog, like a mile and a half or so. And that felt really good. I've been like sitting too much. That was nice this morning. But then I was running around. So I'm going out of town this weekend, trying to start like packing things. I'm a guest on a podcast tomorrow morning and then have to kind of go. So trying to get all that together. So it's like transitioning like too quickly. You get that. Like I'm just like all over the place from like doing all that, which is why then I get here and have to do my deep breaths to sort of ground and center myself, which you understand. So that's where I'm at. Like I'm in a pretty good mood, going away this weekend, got lots of cool stuff coming, can focus on the work I want to do today. And after this, I don't have to talk to anybody if I don't want to. And that's a good day for me sometimes as being a psychotherapist. Like I do not have days often where I'm not talking to somebody. So I'm looking forward to the rest of my day after we do this amazing podcast. Katie, where are you at? Where are you at this morning? Checking in.
Where am I? So I'm arriving in this space, excited to be here. I feel like when I can be in conversation on this work, but especially with really cherished colleagues and friends like you, it just really grounds me and I feel really anchored, which is good because lately it's felt pretty scattered. You know, that feeling of like, you just feel like you cannot get anything done or
Yes.
it's
Finished.
like laundry. Like you finally are done with laundry, and then you have to start laundry again, and it's never ending. And I've been working on a really, really big project, launching a trauma-informed training institute, which has been something I've been working on for years.
Awesome.
And had in my mind, like, yeah, I'll launch it in January. But I'm a caregiver and a human, and
Yeah.
life's, and I have to live life on life's terms. So it's May, and we'll see where we're at. But I just know I have to remind myself and give myself permission that to take my time. And I know a lot of people are eager, which I love, to take
Awesome.
these trainings, and I'm eager to have this live in the world in a new and really expansive way, because we need more trauma-informed leaders. But we just have to walk the talk, right? And so I'm grateful for moments like this and community and peers that help reflect that back to me. And I'm grateful that it's finally getting warmer. I feel like this winter was extra wintry, so the defrost is happening. I'm grateful to have my hands in dirt and gardening, and
that's awesome.
Really, living into my old lady hobbies era.
Oh, I love it. Yes. You need a sticker that says that, because mine are snacking. I'm in my snacking era, my crafting era. Those are mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Little treats,
and I love that.
All of it. Yeah.
And I agree with you. I love that you said that, like, being in this space together grounds you. I haven't thought about it like that, but that's like absolutely true. And like when we meet with other colleagues from like Integrate, when we're aligned on that trauma informed, like I feel the same way. That gives words to what I feel too. And that's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys are here, let us know, do a little check-in. Oh gosh, you're going to love this. My people get excited. Jason is excited.
Love it.
And he's helping you out. Katie's podcast. Yes. Thank you, Jason. Good morning, Andrew. Andrew in the Let's Be Diverse podcast sponsors this podcast. Thank you for being here. Okay, I do 3 deep breaths, just to ground. And like, I talk really fast. And so this helps me kind of slow down so people maybe understand what I'm saying. So feel free to take them with me, Katie, if you want. You kind of know the deal. And through your nose, out through your mouth, try to elongate that exhale. And that's going to give us that calming feeling. So if you guys want to take them with me, here we go. And again. Number 3.
Love it.
Right now I'm like a little bit here.
I'm really into the heavy, heavy, loud, audible sighing.
It's good. I like it. Good. I know everybody talks about yoga with Adrienne. I do more with yoga with Cassandra. I don't know if you know her.
No.
Love her. She's like very good, very proponent of mental health, but she calls those like the kind of loud sigh exhales like a cleansing breath. And that's kind of exactly how it feels, right? Like when you like make the noise and get all of that out.
Yes.
Look, Katie, you're getting fans.
Oh, great. Andrew. Let's connect. Always happy to connect.
Andrew comes from the HR world.
Okay.
But definitely understands our trauma-informed care and people stuff. So
love it.
We need folks like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Andrew.
Awesome.
Okay. So you guys know, like, there's no slide deck for today because we're going to be having this conversation about trauma-informed care being taught or not taught in social work programs in particular. I know Katie teaches in social work programs and does other things. And that's both of our backgrounds are in social work. We both have social work degrees. So that's kind of where we live. Katie might be able to talk about it in programs in general, but we're going to be talking about it in higher education and collegiate education and master's level education, and whether it's there or not, and implications of that for mental health, for the future of mental health care. As you guys know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. This is why I'm having a mental health folks on and talking about trauma-informed care, like from that perspective and how it fits into mental health in the social work world. So before we dive into content, Katie, tell us a little bit of who you are, what's your work background, and like, what do you do now in the world?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. So great to connect with your community. So, I am by training a social worker. I have my master's in social work and nonprofit management, which I got exactly 15 years ago. So, whew, it's been I've lived so many lives, and honestly, I just happened into social work. I honestly didn't know what it was, and it was my final year of undergrad, and with graduating during a recession, and I was like, well, what does one do with a psych and gender studies degree? And I was like, I guess I'll go to grad school. No
Yeah,
one in my family went to college, let alone graduate school. So I was really just flying
same.
blindly at this point. Yeah. And so I was like, well, okay, so I guess I'll be a therapist. And I honestly didn't want to be a therapist, but I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So I had, thank goodness, a professor be like, hey, did you like look into social work? And I was like, no. So I did. I was like, oh, this actually aligns so much more with who I am and what I do. And for context, I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was raised by two parents that really instilled and taught me empathy from a very young age. And as we know, empathy is a learned skill. And
Yes.
I was raised with very focused empathy skills. So it just became who I am. It was a very innate and natural and organic thing for me. And so I always tell people, like, I don't have a bleeding heart. There's a lot of people in helping professionals or healing arts professionals that have this, what we call like a bleeding heart, right? And no judgment to other people, but like that is just not me. And I think, and I, as I reflect back on my childhood, I really give that to my parents who taught me we don't feel sorry for people. We don't need to look down on others. We need to uplift and really understand where people are coming from and use that understanding to treat them with dignity, respect, and help them
I love
move
that.
along with the power and privilege we have.
I love
And so that's where my desire to utilize my empathy into action really came from. I was always volunteering and doing service work. Again, not from this saviorism or this place like of bleeding heart kind of. I just want to like I just like helping people. It was like, no, like this is just what you do, right?
that.
It was just such a like, yeah, this is mental health. Like, yeah, we all have it.
Yeah.
Why are we stigmatizing it? And so in college, I got really involved in mental health advocacy and ran actually our mental health advocacy student group, which led or put on a very large music festival every year to raise awareness on mental advocacy. I know you're going to love that about me. I know
Yeah.
you love a music festival, Sarah.
What's the
Um,
music festival called?
it was called M-Fest, and
Okay.
we had a
M-Fest for
series.
nice.
Yeah, it was named after a student who we had a series of students who died by suicide on our campus. And we really wanted to raise awareness around mental health advocacy and suicide prevention that didn't center on, uh, you know, a traditional college life. I went to the University of Dayton, go Flyers. And it was like a big drinking college town. And
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
we created a music festival that centered health and well-being, and we had puppies and art, and it was just like so much fun and good
Love
music.
it.
And I love that. I was like, how do I make that a career? I was like, okay,
Right.
I want to do this.
Same.
What do
I want
I
to do that with you.
And I guess, 2007, social work is what it is. Now, so it's just like a little, I'm always like the interviewer, so I never get to share a little bit about like my backstory, but
I love this.
yeah. And so, I entered the social work field, and I'm not going to lie, I've had a love hate with this field. It was definitely opened my eyes to the systems that we
Oh, yeah.
exist in. And I have always led with more questions of like,
Yeah.
why are we doing it this way? Why are we
Mm,
continuing doing this way?
that's
How
a
can
good,
we
yeah.
do things differently? Where are certain people at the table? Why aren't they here?
Those are great
And
questions. Great.
obviously, not a lot of people enjoy those questions,
No, they
but
do.
I
This is
can
why
be
I
a
love
passion.
you. I'm that
Yeah.
person too. That's like, what? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And
What?
so in as I always say, like in true social work fashion, my career has taken me everywhere.
Mhm.
I've worked within residential treatment for children and adolescents, and worked within units specifically providing care to folks with autism and on the autism spectrum. I've worked in hospitals, both in acute care and oncology. I've worked in violence prevention and the rape crisis movement, and government running, human services programs within government municipalities. I was very involved in responding to the opioid crisis here in Cleveland.
Nice.
And just, I'm very grateful for the very diversified career I've had.
Mhm.
And the common thread that is woven through everything I've done is trauma-informed care. As we know, the formalization of this approach didn't happen until it started kind of occurring with about 2012 and wasn't formally published until 2014 by the Substance Abuse Mental Health Addiction Services, SAMHSA administration, which is a division of Health and Human Services here in the United States. And if you Google trauma-informed care, that is sort of the best, quote unquote, best practice approach you'll see. Obviously, we know other countries such as Canada, New Zealand, UK, and Australia also have had similar pathways and timelines when it comes to trauma-informed care. We know this approach is rooted much deeper and has a variety of origins, but the formal publication, when we think of those principles, is from SAMHSA. And so I was at the time working on a federal grant. I was working one of 9 schools in the country to work on a first of its kind violence prevention grant in middle and high schools to look specifically at sexual violence, dating violence, and stalking. And so it was funded through the Office on Violence Against Women through the Department of Justice. And so I was being flown to these specific trainings and conferences held by SAMHSA. And I wish, Sarah, I wish my memory was better and I wrote down the names of the people that trained me, because that is where I learned trauma-informed care. It was before it was in the process of being published. I was being trained by SAMHSA. I was being trained by this multidisciplinary team of experts who created what we now know as the formal approach. So my start comes from the beginning and has infiltrated everything I do. So every position I've ever held has been informed by trauma-informed care, and I have always been an educator or advocate in my role. So I was also providing it. And obviously since then have trained with incredible teachers. My learning lineage is very vast and diverse, thankfully, because I believe this is an evolution, not an arrival. So I've learned from Dr. Bruce Perry, Resma Menachem, and a variety of other teachers and folks throughout my career, and continue to learn as well. And so about 8 years ago, I began my coaching business. And at the time, I knew it was a trauma-informed coaching business and providing trauma-informed facilitation, which groups are where my heart is. But I wasn't calling it trauma-informed because it didn't feel quite aligned. And I know a lot of people didn't know what that was. And
especially like back earlier.
So I was utilizing a trauma-informed approach in everything I was doing. And people were responding like, oh my gosh,
this is it.
And I was like, yeah. And it wasn't until the pandemic where I really started to be like, okay, I need to I've always kept my scopes of practice very separate and the boundaries very separate, because the reality is I was maintaining a full-time job while owning a business because of student loans. And, we don't go into social work for the money, y'all. So I kept everything very separate, and it was too much. I was like, I feel like I'm not being authentic, and this isn't the person I want to be. And also, given understanding right away that we were experiencing a collective trauma, which is a pandemic, that this work is vital. And so that's when I really openly started teaching and training trauma-informed workshops and trainings and coaching, et cetera. And that's what I do full-time now. Is I'm full-time trainer and consultant and subject matter expert in trauma-informed care. I honor the origins of the approach that I learned from, but I recognize that the approach that we know, that SAMHSA approach, is often focused highly on those 6 principles. And it does a good job of telling us what it is and why it's important, but not necessarily how to do it. And that's what I specialize in. And I've created over the years an evidence-informed and strength-based advanced trauma-informed leadership approach that really hones in on how do I lead myself so I can lead others and create a culture that is centered on these principles, strategies, and skills and practice and integration. So I work across disciplines and industries. I train thousands of people globally every year on the training system that I've developed. I provide keynotes and advise in different spaces utilizing the subject matter expertise that I have honed and continue to learn and grow in over the last 15 years.
I love it. It's amazing. You summed that up. Yeah. Great. I can't believe you had all those job experiences before. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot of, y'all, that's a lot of varied experience, lots of different demographics, lots of different levels of care, lots of different levels of function on people. Yeah. That is a wide, employment background, which is awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I hope people listening understand, because you look at my CV, which is like 100 pages long.
I hear
like, why do you want this?
Like people are like, no, it needs, and I'm like, y'all don't understand. Like you have to write like what we did at every job. Yeah. Yes.
I have had a lot of jobs, and I will say confidently that I have been successful in every job I've had. People have wanted to keep me in the jobs I've had. I have beautiful relationships with the people I used to work with to this day, and mentors. I am not someone that can work at a job for 40 years and be done. Like that is what my aunt wanted for me, raising me with the work ethic I have. I just am not that person. So I am like the perfect project grant contractor because I get a lot of energy from that. But what I was consistently experiencing in my social work career was dissatisfaction. Like I just never was satisfied. Yeah. And most of it was because I was being continuously stifled. My creativity, my ideas, my abilities and skills and gifts were stifled because of the systems I worked in. And often just put into a box, right? We always put social workers in a box, but what's really, and anyone will tell you, is that social work we are meant to work in a variety of places. We have a diverse skill set. You want us in your law firms, in your HR departments, in your corporate settings, because we bring such a vast depth of skills that most people don't have. And this strengths-based approach and systems view makes us so different from every other profession. We're not just like the people, all the stereotypes, the people taking, kids away from families, or, everyone thinks I'm a therapist, and I'm always here to tell you, I'm not. I'm not a therapist. And trauma-informed care.
I'm the therapist.
She's a therapist, not me. Thanks. Trauma-informed care is not a clinical approach. So when people are like, oh, but that's just for like social workers, I'm like, good news. It's for everyone. Let me tell you how.
Yes. Right. And the other thing I want to say, the dynamic and diversity of the skills of social workers, we also have in-depth and extensive people experience.
Oh yeah.
People learning experience, people observing experience, people working experience. Like if any part of your organization or industry works with people, you want a social worker to inform on something, just like Katie's saying, in your HR departments, in your law firm, at your financial institution, like whatever. We know people.
Yeah. We're people.
We are people. At this point, I know people via print in an email. Like I can already start to figure out a little bit about who you are just by the way you write and answer things, right? Like, because we have all that experience with people. So we have diverse skill set. We have tons of experience with people. If you find the ones that are like falling into the trauma-informed care, I mean, okay, you have a slam dunk on a professional who's going to be a professional. The other thing I like to say, And I like to point people out to social work. I also did not go to school to start with social work. It was an advisor in my junior year of college that was like, you should consider this, when I wanted to originally go get a PhD in clinical psychology and practice that way. Sarah hates research. I do not like conducting it. I like reading it, interpreting it, and telling you all what I found. I do not like conducting it. And so that none of that sounded fun to me. And my advisor was like, well, consider this. A master's in social work is a finite degree for practice. Less time in school, less money in school, right? No dissertation. And I was like, sign me up, check. And so the other thing that I think most people don't know about social work is we have the strictest ethical code than any profession. They surpass all health professions, even doctors, and any other profession. Our code of ethics and ethical practice guidelines are very strict. So it's not every state. You'd have to look it up. It's most states though. And I remember when it happened in Virginia, maybe like 10-ish years ago. Social work is title protected in many, many places because social work, especially in Virginia, I don't know how it is everywhere, has their own curriculum. For our programs, it's different than like counseling programs, psychology programs, everything else. So our curriculum is different. And here in the state of Virginia, I am not regulated by the Board of Health Professionals, like nurses, doctors, PAs, everybody, physical therapists, everybody else. Social workers are housed in the Board of Social Work. So we have our own board that regulates what we do because we have a very strict ethical code and a very specific curriculum to then be able to come out and call yourself a social worker. Now, you could be a counselor, you could be a people worker, you could be a case manager, but you cannot call yourself a social worker if you do not have a social work degree. So when somebody is a social worker, it means something, y'all, and it's not the bottom of the barrel shit that you think it means in the way that we get treated. Katie, you know what I mean. And we didn't go into it for the money, people, or the prestige, because it's neither. Yet these are some of the most professional professionals you will ever know. And then if you get a trauma-informed care one, like I said, slam dunk, toot, like toot the horn, like lots of good skills in there.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, let's okay, you told us where you first learned about trauma-informed care. Let's just do really quickly, like, how do you define trauma-informed care? And then we'll go into some of the like content about curriculum and things.
Yeah.
How do you
So
define it?
if you were to Google trauma-informed care right now, you'll get a lot of different definitions and interpretations. Again, I honor the origins of this approach, which includes the SAMHSA definition, but it's not necessarily the one that I utilize. And we have to honor the origins that are rooted in a variety of places, including the culmination within our historic timeline when the civil rights, LGBTQIA rights, and rape crisis movement, child advocacy movement, mental health hygiene movement all kind of happened at the same time. So with that being said, trauma-informed care is again, an evidence-informed, strength-based approach that utilizes an understanding of trauma. And I use trauma, again, as kind of an umbrella term that also means if you know what trauma is, then you understand stress, burnout, and resilience and grief to inform. And that understanding includes the pervasive nature, meaning that population studies currently tell us that virtually everyone on this planet, including ourselves, will have experienced trauma in their lifetime, as well as the impact, meaning an understanding of the nervous system and how we all have one, how we are all going to respond to stress differently. Stress is a natural part of our human experience. That understanding to inform our actions and interactions with others. And trauma-informed care as an approach, and specifically the term I utilize, and I know Sarah uses too, is trauma-informed leadership, means we honor this approach, but we need to go beyond intention, because most people who say they're trauma-informed or utilize the term trauma-informed care are really just thinking about the 6 principles that define what trauma-informed care is. which are dictated by that SAMHSA model. So safety, trustworthiness and transparency, mutuality, peer support, cultural considerations. Again, no shade to SAMHSA. I honor that approach, but you can't just say safety.
That's right.
I value safety and then
expect people to feel safe, right? Like that's a what, guys? Like, that's a knowledge. That's an understanding that safety is important for people who've experienced trauma, which basically Katie just said is global. So everybody you interact with, whether they know it or not or admit it, right? So knowing that safety is important for everybody you interact with is different than actually facilitating, engaging, acting, making decisions, speaking in a way. That's the how others will actually feel safe or find safety potentially in your presence.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think one of the impetus of me creating the trauma-informed leadership model that I teach and lead and specialize in is that I have taken hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of training over the last 15 years. And I was so eager. And y'all, I have high expectations of trainings, which is that's where my judginess comes out. But I sit there and I'm like, okay, now they're going to tell us how to help people feel safe. How do we build trust?
Right.
And it always stops. Like, I don't need to know another statistic that's all often infactual because it doesn't actually represent people and it's under, most of these stats we used to function from this, like 70% of adults experience trauma. I don't use that anymore because who are those people?
Right.
Most people don't even know they've experienced trauma and most people aren't coming forward with identifying it. So those numbers aren't even cutting it close.
That's right.
But I focus on, okay, how? When I train people, when people come into contact with me on LinkedIn or my podcast, I want people to leave with tangible ways they can actually see and feel this so that they know those indicators. So when someone identifies as trauma informed, they have those indicators because they can see it through their actions. Principles alone don't make us trauma informed. Principles and action yield the impact of trauma informed leadership and care. So that's why I really focus on leadership, not from this traditional old outdated way of a payroll or a pay grade or a C-suite position. I'm talking about self-leadership.
Yeah.
The choice and autonomy we have to show up and lead our lives, which may include leading others or but we're all contributing to a culture, whether it's our workplace culture, our business culture, our community, our family culture. We make choices. And if we choose the trauma-informed path to lead our lives, our actions, we are going to reap incredible benefits and a ripple effect of impact that I don't think people quite understand the magnitude that comes from that.
Yeah.
And I really want to hone in on something that you mentioned before that ties into this is what people don't understand about social workers and the reason why we're so adaptable and able to chameleon our way into a million different positions is because at the core of being a social worker, we learn and are practicing constantly building our self-awareness skills. We practice how to self-reflect, self-assess, self-manage, self-regulate, self-assess, and do that constantly. Any curriculum you look at in a social work graduate program is going to integrate self-awareness skill building. So journaling, mindfulness, presence, feedback, learning, co-learning, mutual aid models, peer support. And that's because we believe, so a social work theory is called self as instrument. We believe ourselves are an instrument in the work we do. So like any instrument, you have to tune it. You have to tune it and move it and maneuver it in a way that can align with the note you want to play.
That's right.
As self as instrument, we have to be attuned to ourselves, personal attunement, so that we can attune to others. And when somebody is attuned and when someone isn't. That can make or break trust, which means that could make or break safety. And that is a key component. Self-awareness is a key trauma-informed leadership skill. If we don't have that, we don't have it at all.
Absolutely. Right. It's going to come out on Integrate's app pretty soon. The workshop that Julie and Femi and I did last week on boundaries and embodied boundaries, really like the felt sense of boundaries. And I talk about attachments and how that impacts, right? And one of the main things in developing our attachment style is attunement. Did your caretakers attune to you correctly, appropriately with the things that you needed? That's going to affect your attachment, which is going to affect so many things later. But one of those is like your ability to set boundaries. It's, like if you're people pleasing, you're not setting good boundaries. If you're afraid of intimacy, you're closed off and you don't have healthy boundaries, right? Like we're swinging one way to the other. So this personal, okay, so let me also say, guys, so this personal attunement so that you can tune to others is a skill you have to learn for at least 50% of the population that did not grow up with secure attachments. So that's like from when you were a baby, right? Like you didn't get to choose. So 50% of the population did not get to choose to have an insecure, anxious attachment. And those folks will need to learn what it is to attune to themselves because their caretakers didn't do it. So it's even learning what you need, what soothes you, what calms you, what helps you feel safe, what helps you feel whole. How do you get connected to your body, to your emotions, right? Like they didn't do that, which is where we learn that. So if they didn't do that, mine didn't, you have to learn that later, and like that is a skill. That's a self skill, right? Like that's work. So everybody that follows me and my stuff, I'm constantly saying self work. What Katie's saying here is what I mean by self work. You need to be self aware, lifelong learning about yourself, tuning things and making adjustments, letting go of like old things, like Katie's saying, like maybe a foundation, but we need to evolve, right? And I love that you point that out. And I think like one of the other reasons like that's a pillar for social work is like, I mean, you've mentioned it. If I would talk about all the places I work, the demographic of people in which we work with is immense, y'all. I mean, it's as diverse as the United States of America and all the different groups that we have in this country. Like we are made to work with anybody with any issue from any background at any time. That is how you provide social services, whether they're mental health, substance abuse, child services, case management, hospital, all the things that crisis intervention, right? Like you don't know who's going to be there at all. And so you have to show up sort of like providing the same service for everybody, right? Like no matter who it is. And so
Yeah.
just really good at that. And I like how you hone in on the personal attunement and the self-leadership, right? This is self-work. You can't, like Katie's saying, you can't learn about trauma-informed care and then say you are doing trauma-informed care, especially if you lack self-awareness, folks. Like that's a big red flag, right? We're going to be like, no, you're missing like a huge piece of it. And I feel like there's a lot of that going around.
Well, yeah, I mean, I talk about that to exhaustion, but I think something that the reason social work programs do prepare you to work across populations and services and whatnot. However,
they do not include trauma-informed care.
Well, yes, and we'll get to that.
We're going to get to that.
But I think what's important to understand is social work programs utilize that self as instrument, focus on that, so that self-awareness building throughout, so that I can go in and attune to say, you know what? Yeah, I could be a therapist. I could go apply for jobs tomorrow and be a therapist.
Right. And they would hire you.
And they would hire me immediately.
Yep.
However,
you don't have the skill set.
I don't want to do it.
Right.
I don't want to. And I know that I'm self-aware to know my limitations. And I know, a few weeks in or months in, I know myself and that it would not bring me fulfillment, which means I would easily burn out and then be unhappy. And that can impact the people I'm holding space for.
Yep.
I have worked with pretty much every population, every job. I've done it. I've done all of it. Same. And the reason why I did that was I wanted to see and learn. I wanted to diversify my skill set. And I've learned from that areas that I thrive in and areas that like I know now, like I'm not going to go back to working in a K through 12 school. It's not for me. The system's really challenging. It's just not for me. When people ask me to come in and do trauma-informed training in schools, I say, thank you so much. However, I have incredible colleagues that I'm going to refer you to who do specialize in doing that. I love working with faith-based communities. However, that's not an area that I tend to focus on. As someone who doesn't belong to a faith-based community, it's just not my jam.
Yeah.
However, I've done a lot of trainings with them. Excellent, amazing, incredible experiences and relationships. Now I know when those referrals come to me, I'm referring to my trusted colleagues. I know that because of self-awareness, right? And so that is where we practice that. And when we don't have that, that's where we can get into potential pathways of harm, ethical dilemmas, blurred boundaries. And so the other thing too that I think we forget is, you can read all the books you want, you can take all the trainings, but if you're not using them, you're not going to be trauma informed, right?
That's
the
right.
same with social work is, and I tell my students all the time, like, you can read all the books on this, theories and all of that.
That's right.
But honestly, it doesn't matter unless you're practicing
You
it.
have to
That's why our field experience is the most vital part of our social work programs.
That's
is
right.
to have those field experiences where you're out. Some people call them, internships, whatever. We call them field. And that's where you're getting that real life application, which is essential to social work.
Yeah. And that's where you put in practice what you've been learning in the curriculum, essentially. And so you would have like a site supervisor and a liaison from the school that's sort of ensuring that like you're getting these experiences at your field placement, right? One thing I did, and like you're saying, I don't want to go do therapy, I don't want to work in schools. Sarah doesn't work with children. Do not send them to me, right? Like somebody would hire me, probably. I have a license, right? Like once you have a license in clinical social work, like people assume you can do whatever. Let me explain also what Katie is saying here, like from my perspective. However, I have to have the self-awareness and the self-leadership to say, I don't want to work with children and I actually don't have skills to work with children because I have not done that extensively. I have not done training in that. I do not have certifications of that. I did not have supervision in that. Could I do it? Yeah, they could hire me to do it right now. Anybody, anywhere. But that's not a good position for me because I actually don't have skills in doing psychotherapy with children. And so the potential for me to cause harm is really great there because techniques and strategies and even the way you talk with adults is not the same that you do with children. And I work with adults and I have a 15+ year career of working with adults. And so although I could do many things, it doesn't make sense for me to do many things because I haven't honed skills in those areas, even though everybody thinks I would have skills in those areas based on my license. And I would have to know, like, I don't actually feel like equipped to do a good job there. Either be objective, use skills correctly or whatever. And that's part of the self-awareness and the self-leadership to say, sure, like I have a diverse set of skills. I worked with adolescents in a field placement, not my favorite thing, not going to lie, got through it, but did not love it. And then moved on and was like, no, I mean, I had a little bit of that experience and I want to do something else. So Katie and I are close, very close to the same age. I graduated in 2008. Did you say 07 for you? Yeah. Okay. So we're like the same basically there. And so when we were in school, they definitely weren't talking about trauma-informed care. Let me also say in my clinical social work program, I took one class on trauma and it was veterans and PTSD. And it was all about that. So I did everything I have learned about trauma, how it works, how to practice it, how to work with CPTSD and trauma and psychotherapy has all been post-graduation, y'all. Actually, post-licensure for me. Training, learning, mentoring, asking, practicing, right? That's just understanding trauma from a clinical standpoint to provide clinical care for it, because it is not what I got in my clinical social work program 15+ years ago. And then trauma-informed care is like this whole other thing than like trauma clinical treatment, right? And so I know how to treat trauma clinically, and then I use trauma-informed care in all my treatment across the board, right? Everything I do. And so you didn't get it either, right? What did you learn about trauma? And what do you know about it? Are they teaching about trauma? Are they teaching about trauma-informed care? Is it anywhere? Is it gonna be part of like, I talked a little bit in the beginning about social work has a very specific curriculum. And that's why like you do have to follow these things, like graduate with a social work degree. You have to have the human justice piece. You have to know some of these other parts of it. Where does this fall in?
Yeah. So it makes sense that you only had one class on trauma and it was primarily focused on veterans, because again, if we're looking at the origins of this approach and the origins of trauma theory and understanding, the research is limited because trauma is a very vulnerable personal thing to study, and I'm always going to say and remind us of nuance and context that, when we look to research, we have to keep in mind the limitations and the lack of representation. Who were they researching? What were the intentions? So like, it's not the end all be all, right?
That's right.
But it makes sense that, most of the research we have, and one of the reasons why trauma-informed care and the study of trauma and trauma interventions are what they are today is because during the Vietnam War, and even pre this, but prior wars before Vietnam, but this was really one of the catalysts, as we were seeing people return from the military back home, reintegrating and displaying what we now know as signs of complex PTSD. Yep. And the VA and people caring for veterans were like, how do we support these individuals with very complex and extreme trauma? And so that is one of the catalysts and origins of this approach. So most of the studies at the time in the early 2000s were probably based on veterans. So it makes sense that was probably the only information we were getting, right? Again, I have a terrible memory. I don't recall taking any trauma specific classes.
Oh, it was an elective for me. It was not required. Yeah. I chose to take it. Yeah.
I know that I learned about trauma, and not to the extent of what I've done on my own. And I began to hear about trauma-informed care because of the field placement I was working. I was a trauma therapist at the time. I was working with children and adolescents in residential treatment who were sent there for just horrific trauma. And so that is where, again, the field experience is where I learned about trauma. It's where I was introduced to trauma-informed care, and I really began my study. That was my second year of graduate school. Again, even the ACEs study, which is the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, which is one of the most pivotal studies, replicable studies that we know related to assessing trauma and its later outcomes on our health and well-being. Again, very flawed. Yeah. A lot of issues with that study, but that was only done like 20 years ago. So this is still a very young field. We're still looking at a lot of things. And I just really think it's important to understand and honor the origins of this approach. And I really encourage you to go listen to the podcast I did with Sarah, because Sarah does an incredible job of helping us differentiate trauma responsive care, which is what she does, which is trauma therapy, trauma focused interventions, versus trauma informed. They're different competency levels. And I think this is where I get the most resistance I get.
I know.
Is from people in our field, because they assume trauma informed means trauma focused care. And that is
that's not it.
However, here's the fun, little, what do we call, a limerick or something. It's like a riddle. Trauma-focused care is not trauma-informed care, but trauma-focused care has to be delivered in a trauma-informed way. And it always shocks people when I say, if you're going to seek out a trauma therapist or a trauma professional to address, to mitigate, to heal your trauma, ask them if they deliver that care in a trauma-informed way, because you would be shocked how many times it is not. And that incongruence can create a lot of harm and issues. How many times have I been in a trauma-informed training by trauma experts? I won't name names. And it is not delivered in a trauma-informed way. It's always like, okay, y'all, like what? So again, this is where I think most people are missing the mark. It's not it's not, I always say this comparison, not to minimize, but to make a really clear distinction. You don't walk into a cooking class and 45 minutes later leave an Iron Chef. Trauma-informed care, the trauma-informed approach that Sarah and I that we talk about all day, every day is a skill set. It is a practice. It's something you hone and utilize through application.
Yes.
It's something that you don't say, you have to be, and it should be felt by others. So we do that through aligned action. Soapbox. So I am an adjunct professor at 2 universities here in Cleveland. One is my alma mater. And I have 2 different roles. So I'm an instructor at one university. And then I am a field liaison at another, meaning I am that liaison for students and their field placements. So I have a lot of different experiences. I also still hold an LCSW-C, which is the same. Every state has a different lettering.
Kind of thing, right?
Licensed,
We all have our own
clinical social worker with
state.
supervision designation. So I also sometimes supervise social workers for their licensure, etc. So I will say we've come a long way. There's definitely more options for studying and understanding trauma in social work programs. I do a lot of work. A lot of my clients are universities. So I am seeing it more integrated into curriculum and practice. Some universities have their own trauma-informed institutes. The one I teach at, Case Western Reserve, has the Center for Trauma and Adversity, which has their own trauma-informed certification. So we're starting to see kind of master's level certification programs in trauma-informed care or trauma-specific care. Now, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
We're not where I want us to be.
Of course.
I obviously, the specialization I teach within a social work program is group work, which groups are essential. You know, everyone is always wanting to do individual therapy, and that's amazing, but group work is essential to our profession and really to everyone if you work with people. And if you can work with groups, you can work with anybody. And so I teach intro and advanced group work, which I love. And I thank you. And I was hired I was specifically told, like, please infuse trauma-informed facilitation. So I naturally embed it because I believe trauma-informed care needs to be the standard of care in all of health and human services. I mean, everywhere, but especially like social.
Let's start there. Yes. Let's start with health. Yes.
But unfortunately, again, we have to recognize the nuance here that social work programs exist in systems, higher ed systems, and higher ed systems are systems, and they are not necessarily designed to be human first. And so as much as I think social work programs tend to be more human first and trauma informed in nature, we're not always there because of the overarching system policies and things. You know, we have a way to go. I think one of the biggest hindrances is that we don't have universality around shared language and understanding around trauma and trauma-informed care. And so that, you know, there isn't one book you can find to talk about trauma-informed care. So it's left to interpretation. And so it's not always formalized into a specific thing. You want some good examples? I would recommend Dr. Jenny King at Case Western Reserve, who does a lot of work with the neurosequential model with Dr. Bruce Perry. That's a great program that is integrated into a social work program and also offers advanced certifications for people who've graduated. The University of Buffalo has always been a longstanding advocate for trauma-informed care. They have great resources that have come out of that university. And I know there's many other institutions, but those two, I just off the top of my head, I know have really specific.
What was the first one you said again?
So Case Western Reserve University's Center for Trauma and Adversity, and Dr. Jenny King and Dr. Holmes run that. And they do a lot of work with the neurosequential model, which is a specific trauma-focused intervention.
And you said Buffalo.
And University of Buffalo has some great trauma-informed work as well. Obviously, there's more, but those are two that stand out to me the most.
Okay.
I will say that, you know, you have to remember, and again, we talk about this in the podcast you interview did with me, is you are getting your foundations and essentials in a social work grad program. If you want to specialize, you need additional training. So
Absolutely.
Sarah is one of the most trained people I've ever met in my life. So like you have to go on. So if you want to be a trauma therapist or specialize in trauma, then you need to go on to determine what is the best modality for you and then get trained in that, whether that's EMDR or ACT, trauma focused CBT,
CBT.
there's all these dialectical behavioral therapy, all these like
Yeah.
somatic experiencing,
Right.
IFS and our internal family systems.
Right.
All of those are special trainings that unfortunately are expensive and time consuming, but they're really good because they're detached from a system that allows for a little more autonomy and specialization. But there's a lot of barriers to access with those things that limit their availability. So those are things to keep in mind. I definitely also want to just mention that the clients I work with are predominantly nursing schools, medical schools, and trauma-informed care is not embedded into medical schools.
Oh my God.
And
so far off.
Dentistry and
And the
all of
way they
these.
treat their providers is like terrible in those systems a lot, like hospital systems and medical
Right, because again,
providers.
it's a system.
Yeah.
And so what I will say is over the last 6 or 7 years, I have worked very closely with hospital systems and medical schools as a guest teacher. And then I have a lot of schools that are embedding my training system into their programs because it's desired. It's just people don't know where to go or
Don't
what
know
to
where to
do.
go.
And
It's
you have to
extremely relevant to
absolutely
any work with people, but healthcare for sure.
It's bi-directional. And this is why I tell people, because this is what I wasn't taught. And this is what fuels my work in trauma-informed care is that when I experienced workplace trauma, that second year of my field placement, I experienced really significant physical assault. And when I experienced that trauma, I was patted on the back by my social work advisor and professor and said, now you're a real social worker.
Get the fuck out.
And then said, go back to your group. I didn't go to occupational health. Like I probably had a concussion. It was pretty significant and it was very traumatizing.
Absolutely.
And I still to this day feel the effects of that, 15 years later from that trauma. And I was taught at the time that trauma-informed care is only the care you give to others. And that is absolutely one of the most horrendous things we can be perpetuating because it's a bi-directional approach. It includes you. So it's trauma-informed self-care. And if you're an organization saying we do trauma-informed care and it doesn't include your workforce, then you are not trauma-informed. It should be including your policies and procedures and protocols, how you're supporting your staff. And this is what I say to my healthcare clients is like this improves your provider experiences. So when we integrate trauma-informed principles and into practice, so that leadership into our organizational culture of care, we're not just increasing our patient or client experiences, engagement, and outcomes. We're also doing that for our workforce and providers, which means we're saving money and looking at that bottom line of, improving retention, decreasing turnover, and satisfaction, where people aren't always going to stay, but you're going to attract new people because of the reputation you're building.
That's right. Yeah. And even if somebody leaves, but they have good things to say about you, like, then that's great. Then you can retain talent, even if you don't retain that specific person with talent, because you retain your reputation, exactly what you're saying. I spent almost 9 years in public mental health before I moved into private practice and worked in rural counties and inner city Richmond. And I mean, all the systems are bad, but the last place I was at is horrible. Like, I don't have anything good to say about it. I would never recommend somebody work there. Leadership was terrible. They don't care. I mean, I didn't have a situation that I was assaulted, and that's crazy, but I had a number of other things that made me feel unsafe, that were unethical, that I did not have support on, that I had to be really firm and like, no, I'm not doing that. and be really firm and advocating. And like, that's crazy because my supervisor sat in my seat, did my job, had my exact caseload before she became my supervisor. And then it's just like, it goes out the door, like the care for the provider. And like, I absolutely was traumatized at my workplaces and taken advantage of, let alone not paid enough, put in unsafe and unethical situations more times than I can freaking count. And I'm one of those like squeaky wheel, like asking the questions and being told to basically like shut up and sit down. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not going to work for me. I cannot work in these places. Like this, it's not good for me. Leadership sucks, like in those things. And so that makes a big difference. And I haven't worked there in almost 10 years and I have no idea if it's changed. And I still would never recommend anybody work there.
And you know what, Sarah, this is the problem with social work. I mean, it's every profession, but here's what I really want to say. And like, honestly, at this point, we don't have any more time to debate this because we are experiencing a polycrisis of collective trauma and we are seeing a consistent
effects
decline of people. Like people are complaining, we can't hire. And you're not looking within. And we're still perpetuating the very definition of chaos is like keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same results. And we're seeing, the increase in mental health, tech startups and AI and all of these things perpetuating those very same systems, right? Underpaying, overworking. Yep. We need, and it cannot be negotiable to have trauma-informed leadership as the standard of leadership in how we do people work. It's not that hard or complicated. We need to stop dancing around the idea and making excuses. It's not, we just need to do it. And we need to start. And I am so grateful to be a part of communities globally with the Integrate Network, with, the Breathe Network, with all of these people and colleagues all over the world, the people who are in the Trauma Informed Leadership Studio that I run, global trauma-informed leaders who are showing up and modeling what it's like to be a trauma-informed leader. And that creates a groundswell to push these systems to prioritize this human-centric, human-first approach. And if we don't, well, the results are already showing.
Our writing is already on the wall, folks.
We see these issues of, how do we prioritize people and profit? Why can't it be both? I've spoken a lot about it this week on my LinkedIn. I've had Angela Johnson on the podcast this week of why do we always have to think in these binary ways?
Yeah.
We can have profit and people. And I'm not going to lie, talk to any trauma-informed business leader, people who apply trauma-informed practices to their business, and they have stronger business practices, yield better marketing, better sales because of prioritizing this approach. We just need more people to be listening and just try it on.
That's right. I mean,
we'll reap the benefits of it.
But practice. Yeah. And that's why Katie has things like the Trauma Informed Leadership Studio for you to practice as well. Like, so guys, like, again, like you can't be like sitting at home behind your computer screen or whatever, reading and learning about this stuff. And then like, going out in the world with no feedback. I mean, sure, you can practice it that way, but like, that's not really where you're going to hone the skill because you're not getting feedback from other trauma-informed professionals that can help you hone this, right? And I think of, okay, so I have to come from like where my business has been most successful, which is in my psychotherapy treatment. And I've been have my private practice 9 years, guys. 9 years tomorrow is when I think I signed the business license at first, right? Yeah, it's crazy. And at this point, 9 years in, I mean, and I've been in the Richmond area, guys, since 2008 when I went to graduate school. Like I've been here for a long time, did my internships here. My supervisors were here. I've worked at a bunch of different places here. A lot of my classmates are still here, colleagues. I know tons of people in the social work and mental health world in Richmond. And to this day, the majority of my referrals come from clients I have or clients I had before. And those are the only people that see me doing the work. Other colleagues in my area don't. They're not sitting in the room with me in my one-to-one psychotherapy sessions. But my clients are. They're getting the care from this trauma-informed perspective. And like I get all I get all kinds of people, like, and they're like, oh, you need a therapist? You should go to my therapist, Sarah. She's amazing. People put me on Reddit in my like local area of like, go to Sarah O'Brien. Like, she's a good therapist. Da, 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 da. And so that's one of those things. Okay. So that's one of those things that helps my profits, right? Like, I have clients, I retain them. They send me other clients. They attend their appointments. They don't no show. I mean, I get fired all the time. Like, that's the nature of it. But like, I don't get fired as much as I used to. Like, I retain my clients longer, or they actually get well and then like discharge, and then they'll refer me to other people. So that's a testament to like, I prioritize people and the care I give to them. My colleagues don't see it. My clients do, because I work in the one-to-one space. And then that increases in my profits and retention of my customer base, basically, guys. And this is from a psychotherapy perspective. And I work in the one-to-one space. It's very limited on where I can make money as a psychotherapist, very limited where I get profit. And basically, if I don't prioritize my work with the people, it's going to be shit, right? Like, for my career, because all of it comes from that. And so this is why trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership, and I say all the time, profits over people, because, and it's like Katie saying, if you prioritize the people, you're going to get the profit. Like, it's and let me also
say, it's a win-win.
Right. And if you prioritize the workforce, they're going to produce better work for you, period.
And now we have researchers now, and now we have research, we have evidence, we have Harvard Business, we have all these people talking about psychological safety, all of these things.
And showing you where this is true.
It's like, we still dance around it. And, I've never seen so many people so resistant to doing the thing that could benefit you on every level. But I think crazy. We don't know what we don't know till we know it. And that's why I do so much work in raising awareness and understanding and making this tangible, and seeing that, like, when people prioritize trust, trust points through actions lead to a felt sense of safety, not physical safety alone or psychological safety. We can't stop there. Right. I'm talking social safety, cultural safety, moral safety, and financial safety. When we have that felt sense of safety, what's possible? I mean, think of who you feel safest with and what you're capable of. Authentic expression, creativity, innovation, focus, productivity, morale,
learning.
Like, y'all, it's a win, win, win.
And let me also say, and what we know about trauma from the clinical standpoint, if you don't feel safe, sort of on any level, but particularly if it's like a high intensity or to a high degree, your ability to concentrate, communicate, and learn are out the window. Like, you cannot do your brain, your physiology in your brain, the neuroscience about this is a clinical piece, the neuroscience about our brain, how we function and what trauma does, and then not feeling that felt sense of safety, it negatively impacts your ability to do almost anything that you expect a human to be able to do, because those things live in the prefrontal cortex, which is a human part of the brain. It is the most actualized part in evolution. Only humans have it. And it's things like executive functioning, concentration, moral reasoning, language, communication. And that is all offline if you are feeling unsafe, because in any regard that you're feeling unsafe, you are on defense and in self-protected to save yourself, right? To be safe. If you are in that space, your ability to focus, communicate, and learn are like out the window. So coercive leadership, places that do not prioritize psychological safety, using intimidation and like all the shitty tactics, right? They're probably almost not doing anything. Like, I'm going to bring it down to like 20 to 30% productivity if that's how they feel at work at best. Like, you just can't get people to do these things. Like you're saying, creativity, innovation, communication, problem solving, focus, concentration,
conflict management. Yeah.
Oh Lord. Right. And openness, curiosity, all out the window. Right. And so it's not happening. It's like, you can't beat it into people, it's like whipping somebody into like doing better, right? That negative reinforcement. It doesn't work as much as positive reinforcement, yet people still use it. And we've known that for a really long time in research. And this is basically like the slam dunk of positive reinforcement, and how like it's actually helpful for people in doing all the things you want humans to be able to do. But when you treat humans like robots and not humans, you are only going to get a very finite set of skills and productivity, because they're shrunk and they're in a box, and we can't expand and we can't get there. And so you're literally shooting yourself in the foot, and realize it.
This comes back to where we kind of started with this conversation, is that I always say trauma-informed leadership isn't hard. It's not complicated, but it's a choice. And the reality is you're choosing to do something that hasn't been done because it's countercultural. Trauma-informed anything is countercultural because, again, honoring the origins of the approach, we are choosing to honor the lived experiences, the identities, the neurodiversity, the human before us. Humans are complex and complicated and nuanced. And our brains love either or thinking, but either or thinking leads us down a path to harming ourselves and others. And so when we come in to our business, our teams, our departments, whatever it may be, with a trauma-informed approach, we're trailblazing because this goes against the culture. And that does take choice. It takes some work. It takes effort to show up consistently. But for me and my commitment to this approach, my passion for this approach, if it's not evident, I don't see any other choice. I don't see, this is how I choose to live my life. Am I perfect at it? Hell no, because this is a practice.
That's right.
Not perfection. Am I constantly learning? God, all the time.
Yeah.
Do I mess up? Always. Do I have the tools to adapt and practice resilience? You bet. And I've seen lives change.
Yeah.
Businesses change, programs, institutions change for the better because of this approach. And my mission is to make, generate an awareness, create more shared language and understanding, provide a roadmap so that we can feel this impact and create a trauma-informed future where it's not trauma-informed leadership, it's leadership, right? We don't even have to say it. It's the expectation, not the exception.
Exactly. I love that it's not trauma-informed leadership. It's just leadership. And Katie mentioned in the beginning, like trauma-informed leadership encompasses emotional intelligence, building resilience, right? And those are also great leadership skills, but it's just amazing how it's lacking. Like,
right. Because it's what's informing that. Like, again, there's a million professional development things, emotional intelligence, all this stuff. That's great. But the trauma-informed piece isn't giving you another thing to do. It's creating cohesion across the board.
Yes.
So you don't have to do another training. It's creating the cohesion, because the key here is, why are you doing it? You know why. You understand why emotional intelligence, which I don't love that term, but
right.
Whatever.
But that's what people know.
Why that's important. And it's coming back to empathy is a learned skill.
Yes.
Self-awareness is a learned skill. Enough with this soft skills, hard skill. I hate that so much. This is being a human. Yeah. And unfortunately, being a kind, compassionate human is hard to find these days. But also,
it's hard work sometimes.
This isn't being kind. This isn't being polite. Trauma-informed care is a boundaried practice.
Yes.
It takes courage, and we need people to take the choose courage right now. And we need it desperately if we want to see sustainability in our programs and services. This isn't about social work. This is about all of us, no matter what team, department, or industry you're in.
And it's because this promotes wellness across the board for everybody, even the leader, the leadership, like your customer base, your cleaning staff, your front staff. I mean, this is like, it's not different based on your level within your organization either, which is something that we see tons of.
Absolutely. The training system I have that I train, I think I trained over 3,000 people last year.
It's amazing.
The same training for surgeons and doctors is the same training for lawyers and judges, is the same training for small business owners, is the same training for HR. Everybody gets the same training. It's all
right.
the same. How I teach you how to apply it to your professional boundaries, scope of practice, and
Right.
make it applicable for you. And give you everything you need to apply it. And the reality is that I often people leave and they come back and they say, oh my gosh, I was here for professional development. I didn't realize that this would be so applicable to my marriage, to my parenting, to my relationships, my friendships. And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, because we can't compartmentalize our humanity. And it works across the board. That's why I say we develop our lens. This applies to our lens of influence.
That's
Every
right.
choice we make impacts the people we come in contact with, both personally and professionally. Let's start professionally. Let's start with what we have and
That's
take
right.
small shifts, because I posted today, like, small shifts make big impact.
They do.
You know, simple things and knowing why you're doing them, that's that trauma-informed piece.
That's right.
Can actually generate and yield long-lasting sustainable impact.
And like, you can apply it to work, but like, I almost don't know how you apply it to work and then you're not this, like, in life. Like, it's hard, you know, because you're being authentic and vulnerable and open. If you're doing that at work, you know, it's like, I don't know how you're not doing it every place else, but it is, you know, in the last several years that I've like kind of done this deep dive into my own trauma healing and then learning about all this stuff. It's like, it feels like the most natural way to show up in the world. It's the way I can actually be my most authentic self, is under trauma-informed care principles and like living that out. And so, yeah, when you like synchronize that, basically, right, like it just comes to be the way that you live and like how you act in all situations, right? Whether you're talking to like the, you know, the your barista at Starbucks, or right, like the C-suite executive, right? Like this is where it goes across the board here. And I think like a huge piece of this that I feel like people miss, and we'll like sort of wrap up, is trust is important. Like, if you don't have trust, you don't have safety, you don't have trauma-informed care. Now, you can't choose who trusts you or not, right? Like, that's some of people's own stuff, but like that has to be important. And I know that you see this too, and in leadership, they just don't care. Like, if their staff or their team like trust them a lot of the time, but it's like, if you don't have trust, then I'll say it like this. If you don't have trust there, then there is like a low level frequency of unsafety that everybody is experiencing all of the time.
100%.
Whether they can feel it or not, it's there. And then you already heard us talk about the negative impact of not feeling safe. You can't produce as well. You can't function as well. You can't communicate as well, right? Like, throw out the door being able to amicably and with compromise resolve conflict. It's not going to happen, because you're not even going to say what you really want to happen in a conflict resolution if you don't trust who you're saying it to. You know, like, there's no point to even participate authentically if they are also not participating authentically, which is why this is countercultural and it has to be a choice, like Katie is saying.
Yeah. You know, I think sometimes we go to extremes when we talk about workplace culture.
Yeah.
And I think we can all think of, unfortunately, you know, quote unquote toxic workplace environments, leaders, bosses, etc. But
Like,
I don't think we talk enough about the insidious nature of distrust and some of these things that people are like, well, they're fine. But then there's these little tiny things that happen that erode trust over time.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people that don't care about trust.
Yes.
Hands down.
Agreed.
I do think a lot of people care, but they're functioning from the mentality that trust is assumed because I am the manager, the supervisor, the authority.
Yes.
And we know that trust is not assumed.
No.
It's built over time.
Yes.
And we build trust at the pace of our nervous system.
I love it. I was getting ready to say that. I'm so glad that you said that.
So
You say all the time. Trust. Say that again.
We build trust at the pace of our nervous system. So if I have a history of workplace bullying, harassment, trauma, etc. Or my manager or coworker may has, you know, personality or says things that are similar to things that have made me distrust people in the past or have experienced a trust rupture in the past. It's going to take me a longer time to trust that person.
Yes.
And so we have to shift away from this mentality that trust is assumed. We earn
And
trust
expected.
and expected. We
Yeah.
have to earn people's trust. It needs to be built with intention. And what I teach in the trauma informed training system that I have is we build trust through trust points. There's all sorts of strategies and skills that we can utilize on a day-to-day basis with people to build points of trust that lead us to a felt sense of safety. Now, the first thing we need to do is practice acceptance that not everyone's going to trust us and not everyone's going to feel safe. When we can come to that place of acceptance, we can still show up and try to build that trust and focus on that trust. And those things are probably a lot of the things you're already doing, right? A lot of this is affirming what you're doing, but now you know why you're doing it and why you should continue to do it.
Yeah. What's the impact of doing
absolutely.
it? Absolutely. To do it.
I shared like a really simple thing today on my LinkedIn. I said, correctly spelling and correctly pronouncing someone's name is a trust point. I cannot tell you, I posted that on Instagram and LinkedIn. I had a flood of DMs of people telling me how impacted they have been because people have spelled or mispronounced their name, and how somebody simply just looking at the spelling could have changed the trajectory of that relationship. Yep. Y'all, it takes 2 seconds?
People misspell my name all the time. It's Sarah.
Right.
But the number of times in an email I've signed it and they leave the H off is just like, it's careless. It's not paying attention.
It's careless.
It seems like you don't matter.
But it's also erodes trust over time. It's not just a word or a misspelling. It's somebody's name. It's their identity. It's meaning. And taking the few seconds it takes to check or say, hey, I don't want to mispronounce your name. Can you say it for me? People love that. I do it all the time. It takes a few seconds. Why that's so important is we can think of trauma, stress, burnout as too much, too fast, too soon. Trauma is extreme form of stress. It overwhelms our nervous system or the system of a culture. We can practice the antidote to trauma by just pacing ourselves, practicing that pause. I'm not saying slow down. I'm saying take a second to say, is it Robin with an I or a Y? Let me double check. Oh, did my spell check constantly wants to change that letter? I got to keep going back. It takes a few seconds, y'all. It's super simple and has an incredible impact. That's what we're talking about. Trust point. Lead to another trust point. These are the skills and the strategies that I really hone in on when I work with individuals and companies to say, okay, let's look at these small shifts to yield a bigger impact. Trust is essential. I mean, honestly, this should be called trust-informed care because it's like so essential to everything. But it also, the trauma-informed piece helps us understand that the opposite of trauma is not healing and resilience, it's safety. And so we need to really understand what safety means, which means understanding the nervous system functions and the responses we have, understanding these things. That's the informed understanding. We're not saying become a PhD in trauma. Like, I actually am a firm believer, which a lot of people will disagree with, especially on LinkedIn. And that's okay. I welcome the conversation. I don't think we need to be giving so much information about trauma and the neurobiology of trauma because it ends up flooding people, which becomes counterintuitive to the approach. I think we need to give people just enough and then resources to resource themselves and continue their education to actually be trauma informed.
Yeah, that's great. Like that really, that's an important piece. And I think like when we talk about like the neuroscience of it, that's like a lot of, I do a lot of that because like that informs my clinical practice. It's how I help evoke change with my psychotherapy clients in the one-to-one space. It's it's big for that. And I don't like tell them all the neuroscience. I use the neuroscience like in my interventions, right? And like when they want to know, I tell them, I give them like the bits because that helps them link it and then follow through, and then we get change, right? Like, and it's all part of used as that. But when, like we're saying here, trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership is not a clinical skill. It's how you approach people and how you approach yourself, basically. And so, yeah, you don't need all of that to learn something like a trust point is getting somebody's name right. Right. Like it's you don't need all of that, as like what Katie's saying here, but we need to understand enough to know why we apply it this way and then like why it works. You know, the other thing I want to say, and then we'll wrap up here with this, is the thing about the names, right? Like, I think I learned that from you, probably helpful. I mean, I think I do that anyways, because I meet people so often that I don't know, right? Like in their first session, it in psychotherapy, in their intake session, it's asking them if I feel like I can't pronounce it right, like what is their name? So doing that, it's like taking a lot of these skills outside of my clinical space and using them like in other parts. So, okay, the couple of seconds it takes to get it right, you know, or correct the autocorrect that was wrong. And then Katie also saying like, I'm not perfect. I don't always get it right. Let me focus on that, because I think people, it's like, what do you do when you make the mistake then? Okay, like there's another trauma-informed touch point that we can get here. And this is taking accountability for saying it wrong again. So you don't have to get it right all the time, but you do have to acknowledge if you didn't get it right, take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for your mistake. That doesn't make you a bad, shitty person. That means you made a mistake and you should own it, instead of like, oh, I have so much shame that I got it wrong and I don't want to draw attention to it. Draw attention to it. It's going to make it better for everybody. And honestly, if you do that and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I got that wrong again, or I didn't check my autocorrect before, I apologize for not getting your name right. I know I wouldn't like it either. Like whatever you say to validate, you know, that kind of thing, you feel better. You feel probably less shame for getting it wrong, which is what's going to happen when we make a mistake, when you actually go to repair. And it's going to, you know, it's that trust point for the other person as well. But it does something in you. You know, it's like, it's also reminding you about trauma-informed care. Like, I don't have to be perfect. I can make a mistake. I can own it. And people don't hate me. And I don't have to hate myself, right? Or whatever.
It alchemizes the shame that is so entrenched in trauma and stress. And again, that is an example of restorative practice, which is an essential trauma-informed leadership skill that at least I include in the model that I teach, because it's so simple and we don't know how to apologize. This is a whole other podcast where we can talk about the anatomy of an apology. Don't overthink it, y'all. Just say that I own that. Yep. I own that. That's my mistake. I apologize. I will do better next time. You don't need to go into there's no buts in apology. You don't say that wasn't my intention. Nope. Just say mistake, you know? I am so conflict averse. I hate it. It makes me nauseous. And I have been thrown into so many life lessons of conflict.
Yeah.
And the more I just own the simple stuff, the more the shame, the anxiety gets alchemized into just like, okay, yeah, human. And you know what? I would want, if someone did that for me, I'm like, great.
Exactly.
You know, us name spelling, people spell my name all the time. My family spells my name wrong. Like, you know, it's just like what it is. And I use that just as a very simple but powerful example.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you say that, like, the anatomy of an apology. It's like apologizing is a skill. Essentially, it's another, like you said, empathy is a skill. So something I've been working on and recognizing in my trauma healing and things is the only things I learned from my family system were achievement and anger. That is it. I did not learn about other emotions. I did not learn about empathy. I did not learn about apology. Big thing for me in all of my relationships, especially the one with my spouse, is I do not know how to forgive. It was not modeled to me. Nobody extended it to me. I don't know what it looks like. It makes me feel very weak. I don't like, I can't forgive and be boundaried. Like, this is like a real area, like I'm trying to work on right now. So let me say, folks, like, we don't come out of the box with these skills. You know, if you were taught these skills by your family system, fantastic. But if you grew up in a family system mine with a bunch of fucked up narcissists raising me, like I didn't get shit. Like it's amazing I'm a therapist and I can do anything, honestly, at this point, because like I don't know how to forgive anybody else, let alone myself. Like saying the words makes me nauseous. It's real difficult for me because it's like a weak point. You know, it's a place there, I guess, where I feel vulnerable and don't have as much as my strength because I don't know how to do it. Nobody's modeled it for me. I don't know I don't know how to ask for it. So then I just feel real bad if I make mistakes, right? Like that's all wrapped up in it. And more and more, right? Like it's illuminated to me. It's like, well, shit, that's a skill that I just didn't get. My best friend is like nice about pointing it out. She's like, I love you, but like, you don't know how to forgive. Forgiveness is hard for you. And I was like, duh, you know, who the fuck taught me that? Like, you know, my family, like nobody even I don't even know how to do it. Like nobody ever said, I forgive you for making a mistake or I forgive myself for making a mistake ever. It's not something I've ever heard or learned.
Look,
so I was like,
look at this self-awareness.
Right. I was like, of course I don't do it. I'm so bad at it. Right.
Yeah,
like, and I'm really bad also at apologizing in my main relationship, right? With my spouse, that's been really illuminated. He pointed that out to me a long time ago. And it's because nobody in my family ever said, I'm sorry. For hurting you, for like making a mistake, for getting that wrong ever. Talk about trauma, y'all. Like your caregivers traumatize you, you have a reaction to it, and then they don't even say I'm sorry. Like this is why Sarah is hard and tough and angry, right? Like this is why I'm a difficult human to be in a relationship with a lot of the time. And I get it. I'm working on these things. But this is where I need trauma-informed care. And I love our group for this because like none of this was modeled for me. Like I'm telling y'all, Katie's my mentor, Julie's my mentor. Like I learned from these people because I did not have these models. This was not taught. I can't read this in a book. It has to be modeled for me to then also feel confident to do it and have it not trigger all my trauma. You know, it's like if I go to apologize or forgive somebody, it's like, you know, like I have to do like you're talking about like the restorative care sort of, and like, okay, like that's okay. Like this is gonna like come ground, Sarah. It's okay to say I'm sorry or I forgive you or to forgive somebody else. Like I say that right now, and it's like, that doesn't sound right. Doesn't feel real. I still got to work on it. But like the anatomy of apologizing, conflict resolution, right? And forgiveness, and then being able to communicate these things in a way that's like not self-promoting, not defensive, and not rude. Also take skill, right? And it's not just like how you approach others. It's like, what's happening in you? Like, it kicks up my weakness and shame when I have to apologize. I hate getting things wrong. Hate it.
It comes back to that personal attunement.
Yes, right. And I hate getting things wrong because I never got anything right in my family system. I could not do enough right. And so now, like being wrong, getting something wrong is awful for like my self-talk and my self-esteem. So I'm actually like upset at myself for like hurting somebody else and doing something wrong, right? I feel bad that I hurt them and it comes out as anger at them. That's very confusing for people and they cannot understand, like, do you actually care about me? It's like, I care so much. I'm so mad at myself and I can't do anything with it that it's also just coming out. And then I'm hurting you more. And then I'm feeling more shame because I can't fucking get it together. Right. And like manage this. And so then I do this like shame spiral thing, right? Which when I'm in that shame spiral and my trauma is triggered, I am an angry bitch. Like there's nowhere else to say it. That's how it comes out for me. It's very aggressive. And it's like, well, like I need like tender love and care and trauma informed care then, right? But it's like, man, I'm really difficult to love. I'm like beyond a porcupine, you know? And it's like, I'm feeling so bad about myself because that's what I grew up in. I really need somebody to give me a hug when I make a mistake and say, it's okay. It's okay that you did that thing, Sarah. And like, I got hurt by that. Like, that's also trauma informed care because what I'm doing is like, it's rough, you know, and if I can't get through that, then it also comes out and impacts my relationships or my interactions with other people.
Yeah, I think that's such a good example of how sharing that, which thank you for sharing that. And I think that highlights just how important trauma, like how this approach works, is that we would never know that about you.
No.
And for you showing us under the iceberg, we can validate that we now know why you may react to certain things, right? Because of a catalyst or trigger being a mistake or failure. Here's the key thing that people misunderstand. You may then react in a way that could hurt other people, right?
Absolutely. And
it doesn't make those behaviors okay. So we know why Sarah does this. We understand that this is rooted in deep, complex trauma from childhood. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay that she behaved that way, but we understand why.
Yeah.
And that's empathy.
And compassion.
That's empathy. And then we then use that to inform. Now, obviously, the reason why it's harder to do this approach within personal relationships is because there is a lot of trust there.
Yeah.
And that we're more, when there's more trust, we're more authentic and we're more vulnerable. So yeah, it's harder for me. I mean, am I a trauma-informed caregiver to my mom with Alzheimer's? Mm-hmm. I mean, I would be pretty ashamed of the way I have to show up sometimes. And it's not trauma-informed because it's so vulnerable. It's so hard. I'm working on it. I try my best. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame, but it is what it is. Right. And that's why I own that I'm not, it's complicated to care for people who you don't have the best relationships with. And so this is where we usually only see people on the surface. Can we pause and take a moment to say, okay, what's underneath that? We don't need to dig, but can we just insert a little empathy and then use our boundaries and skills that trauma-informed care gives us, trauma-informed leadership? Because again, I'm trying to help us shift the mentality that trauma-informed care in general is not giving us that. Trauma-informed leadership is to then know how to interact with that person.
Right. And so if somebody's on the receiving end of that, it could look like, hey, seems like you're activated or this is a reaction. I get it. Like if anybody knows that about me. However, what you said or the way you said it had kind of an impact on me and I need a little bit of space. So that's somebody showing up with like trauma-informed care for me and themselves and setting a boundary to like regain their own sense of safety. And I'm still not going to feel great, y'all. Like it doesn't matter. That's my own work to do on the back end, but I'm going to feel less like shit if somebody responds to me like that than if they're like, you fucking crazy, aggressive bitch, like that's going to, I'm just going to like dig in and be
reaction. And reaction.
Right. Explosion.
Work, right? So that response earlier is a reaction and a response.
Yes.
I'm clear. Hey, you hurt me. Not okay. I'm transparent. I'm going to need space now. I'm firm in my boundaries and I'm going to follow through with that. Right.
And I still care about you.
I still care about you.
I got to take care
of affect. I'm not reacting.
Yeah.
And then taking the space needed.
And that's hard.
That's it, y'all. It's hard. Oh, yeah.
It's hard, but it's not rocket science. Like the mechanics of it is not difficult to understand. The practice of it is, and you can't do it by yourself. You have to actually practice with others.
And that's why the trauma-informed leadership strategy, I teach 6R strategy. The last R is resource. How do we resource ourselves? And that is learning, okay, how do I resource myself when these things happen? Who do I go to? So, I mean, Integrate Network has walked me through many a times where I've been reactive to something happening because I need to be seen and validated in community that I trust. And then helps me process. And then I can go back and be responsive in a situation.
And not reactive because the community is part of resourcing yourself.
Exactly.
And it's the same for me.
For it's professional. I know who I turn to in my personal life.
Right.
When it's personal, like, that's part of resourcing myself.
Yes. Right. And so this is all part of that self-work, guys. Like knowing like when and how to resource yourself is self-work. It requires self-reflection and self-awareness, and then testing things out and then seeing how that fell, and like going back to the drawing board if you need to. It's not always a one and done, and as I say, and as Katie's saying, like it's ongoing. Self-work is ongoing, right? Because we're always attuning, and self-work and learning in general should be a pillar of leadership, not just trauma-informed leadership, but leadership, right? Like we're talking about.
We're getting there.
Such a great conversation. I hope everybody learned a lot. As we wrap up now, even though it was extra long, this was such good stuff. Katie, what are you doing next? Where can people find you? What do you have that they can do? What's coming up for you?
Yeah. So the easiest way to connect with me is on social. So LinkedIn, Instagram is where I hang out most. I have a Trauma Informed Future podcast, which Sarah, I really encourage you to listen to my episode with Sarah, and have incredible guests where we go deeper into these types of conversations, the nuances, and really give you tangible examples of how people are leading this approach out loud. If you want to learn more about trauma informed leadership, specifically the model that I teach, I have a workshop that's an introduction to trauma-informed leadership that's on demand and available. If you want to practice your skills, join us in the Trauma-Informed Leadership Studio. And if you are an organization that really, team, department, even a full organization or company that wants to start looking at adopting these principles, skills, and strategies, let's connect. I have a training system that I utilize to train folks, but I also license these trainings so that you can embed them into your company. And so soon, like I mentioned earlier, we'll be launching that same training system just for individual leaders. Maybe your company's not ready, but you want to adopt the approach so you can start mirroring and modeling it to help ready your company to adopt this approach. So that training institute will be available very, very soon. The wait list is open if you want to be first to join.
So y'all check that out. Katie, is your Trauma Informed Learning Institute and the training that you do now similar to your Trauma Informed Space Holding, and you've like tweaked it a little bit, or do you still do Trauma Informed Space Holding, or this is
so the program that I've led for many years called Cultivate, which is a Trauma Informed Space Holding program, is actually being turned into a Trauma Informed Facilitator certification. So like I said, I have always and continue to specialize in group work. Yeah. So this will be turned into a professional certification to utilize the Trauma Informed Space Holding blueprint that I have to give facilitators of any kind, whether it's group work, individual, team management, anywhere where you're facilitating, a really in-depth training on how to do so in a trauma-informed way.
That's awesome. I'll need that. I am Cultivate trained, y'all. I did do Katie's Trauma-Informed Space Holding training. Like I said, I learned from her. I actually did that. I'll probably do that certification once you get it out. I would love to, right? Can't hurt. Can't hurt me. Learn something else and throw on another certification there.
You're running out of wall space, Sarah. Where are you going to put it?
I finally just got all this up and was like, oh, okay. Yay. Yeah, I don't know where it's going to go. I have to rotate them maybe.
Yeah.
Have that kind of experience. So lots that you guys can learn from Katie, of course. Like I said, I learned from her all the time. She's an amazing mentor, colleague, and friend of mine. I got to meet Katie in Cleveland last year, and shout out to Cleveland. I fucking loved Cleveland. Katie knows Cleveland is Richmond, Virginia's sister city. Like I feel right at home there. Katie and I are going to get to meet up again with Julie and Famia in Dearborn, Michigan here in a couple of weeks. So if anybody is near Detroit, Dearborn, Michigan, link up with us. We're having an in-person trauma-informed leadership event. It's really casual, but really good. It's going to be a really good space. You're absolutely going to feel restored afterwards. I loved our time in Cleveland. I'm really looking forward to this. For me, the biggest thing I have going on now, y'all, if you see my post, is the third book I have co-authored, anthology, is coming out on Saturday. This is the third book in the Stories of series compiled by Trent Scoggins. Sparked to create these books because he lost his daughter to an accidental homicide in 2015. And in his grieving process, he sort of traveled across the country to hear about other parents who lost their kids in different ways and then has compiled these books. So one reason I want to promote these books is not just because I'm in it and all the authors and stories are amazing. It's because those stories should and hopefully are a resource for anybody struggling through grief to sort of understand what that looks like. In addition to that, there are grief resources in the back of the book, websites, providers, books, things so many things that the authors contribute to every book. So there's some different ones in every book. So pick them up. It is a resource to keep with you to have those to offer to people. We're partnering with nonprofits. Any nonprofits can partner with me. You not only get a discount on a book, but you get a portion of the proceeds of the book if we do like an event together. And another thing that Trennis does with these books is a portion of the proceeds goes into a fund to help folks who cannot afford grief therapy to be able to get it all around. This is a book for everybody. The positive impact that purchasing this book will have is so great. More than just purchasing a book to read the stories for yourself. There's so much that it's giving back to when you purchase the book. So the launch is this Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern. There will be a live. I will try to post a link for it with the authors that can participate. We'll be talking a little bit about their chapter in the book. If you guys have seen the post, I talk about losing my brother to the Iraq War in 2006, and it has been the most impactful death experience and grief I've had in my life. And it's a very near and dear to me story about 20 years in the making, waiting to write it. Hopefully it's going to give me my kickoff to writing my whole book on that. That is my plan. That was always my plan. So thank you, Katie. So that's the next thing that I have coming out. So keep following me. I'm posting about it all week because the launch is a big deal for the authors. The other thing I want to say that we just found out is there is going to be a huge marketing and book event on July 10th in New York City, Times Square, where they will have a video marquee of all the Love's Lost faces.
Wow.
And we're having a lot of author events, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. Not only do I love New York City and I haven't been there in about 10 years, but like after almost 20 years, my brother being gone, I cannot imagine the feeling of his face on a freaking billboard. It's kind of like what I've been wanting to do and shout, right? Like this whole time. And so really, really exciting. If you are in and around the Richmond area, I will be doing book signings at local book places, bookstores, in Barnes & Noble, because that's where Trennis has a contract. And Trennis Goggins will be coming here at some time himself with me to do a book event and book signing event. So that is what I have coming up. If you want to learn more about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership, Katie Kurtz is your girl. She's my girl. So like I said, if you like anything you've learned from me, I've basically learned it all from Katie. So you definitely want to follow her, listen to her podcast, get her stuff, read her things. Like it's as engaging as it was today. And you are going to learn so much. Again, thank you to Andrew Stout and the Let's Be Diverse podcast for hosting the Healing Hour. I will be on next week with Andrew himself. He is my guest next week. We are going to be talking about something related to mental health, but you know me, flying by the seat of my pants. I made it to this week, and now I'll start thinking about next week. So you are going to get to meet the man himself. So join me next Thursday, May 22nd at 11 a.m. for the Healing Hour. If you want to find anything I have going on, go to www.sarahobrienlcsw.com or find me on Instagram at Sarah Fargo O'Brien LCSW. I think that's all. Katie, thank you so much for being on today. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so grateful that you were here to talk to my community and teach me even more. And this was such a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
All right.